My stepmother, Victoria, leaned over to her attorney in the courtroom, her signature diamond earrings catching the harsh overhead light. She didn't bother hiding her smirk as she whispered, loud enough for the court reporter to hear. Without us, she'd have absolutely nothing. The judge slowly adjusted his glasses, looking back and forth between Victoria's smug smile and the official probate dossier sitting on his bench. "Wait," the judge said, his voice echoing in the silent room. "They really don't know?" Victoria's attorney froze, his confident posture collapsing in a split second. He leaned toward his client and whispered, "Know what?" The judge looked directly at Victoria and said, "Because she isn't asking for her father's estate. She already owns the trust that controls all of it." Victoria's smirk vanished. Her face went completely pale. "Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached." Hello, I'm Clara Vance, 28 years old, and for the past 6 years, I was forced to play the quiet, grieving daughter while my world was dismantled right in front of me. To understand how I ended up sitting across from my stepmother in that courtroom, you have to go back to the man who built everything, my father, Arthur Vance. Dad was a self-made titan who founded Vance Logistics, a company that practically kept the state's shipping grid alive. He was hardworking, brilliant, and deeply loving. But after my mother passed away, Dad made a mistake that changed our lives forever. He married Victoria. At first, Victoria played the part of the doting, elegant wife. But within months, her true face emerged. She was calculated, cold, and intensely ambitious. She brought her 25-year-old son Julian into our lives, and together, they treated our home like a corporate acquisition target. I've always been quiet and observant, preferring to stay in the background rather than fight unnecessary battles. Victoria used that trait against me. Slowly and systematically, she pushed me out of the family household. She changed the locks on my old bedroom, canceled my access to family accounts under the guise of budget restructuring, and treated me like an unwelcome, low-level employee in my own home. Dad was aging and his health was beginning to fail, a vulnerability Victoria and Julian exploited at every turn. They isolated him, controlled his schedule, and made sure I was always the outsider looking in. I thought I was enduring it all for Dad's peace of mind, but I had no idea what they were really plotting behind closed doors. When Dad passed away, the end came with a terrifying speed that left me completely numb. Within weeks, a sudden aggressive illness took him from us, and before I could even fully process the reality of his absence, the funeral was over. The white lilies on his grave were still fresh. The dirt barely settled when Victoria called me into Dad's private study. I walked into that room expecting a shared moment of grief. Instead, I found Victoria sitting behind Dad's mahogany desk, sipping espresso like she was hosting a casual business meeting. Julian stood right beside her, leaning against the windowsill with an arrogant smirk plastered across his face. Without saying a single word of comfort, Victoria delivered a cold, verbal ultimatum. "You have 30 days to remove your personal items from the estate, Clara," she said, her voice completely devoid of emotion. "A formal eviction notice has already been issued." I stared at her, stunned. 30 days? Victoria, this is my family home. What are you talking about? Julian let out a dry, condescending laugh. "It was your home, Clara, but Dad signed his final will 3 weeks ago, while you were conveniently out of town running errands." Victoria gestured toward a cashier's check sitting on the desk. "Your father left the entire estate, the lake house, and all operating shares of Vance Logistics to Julian and me. Out of the goodness of my heart, I'm giving you this $15,000 check as a courtesy settlement. If you try to contest it, my legal team will ensure you walk away with zero." They thought they had trapped me in a corner. They thought $15,000 was enough to buy my silence and erase my entire life. I didn't argue. I didn't cry or scream. I simply walked out of the study and waited until 2 in the morning when the house was dead silent. Knowing I only had 30 days before Victoria locked me out forever, I slipped back into Dad's private office to pack up my childhood photographs and small personal keepsakes. As I was wrapping a hand-carved wooden box my father had given me on my 16th birthday, my hand accidentally brushed against the back panel of the built-in bookshelf behind his desk. It gave way with a soft click. Behind a row of heavy leather-bound books was a small concealed compartment I had never seen before. My heart hammered against my ribs as I reached inside. My fingers wrapped around 3 things: a heavy brass key, a bank safety deposit receipt, and a sealed envelope with my name written across the front in Dad's sharp, familiar handwriting. I tore the envelope open with trembling fingers. "My dearest Clara," the letter began. "If you are reading this, it means I am gone, and Victoria and Julian have made their move. Do not believe a word they tell you about my final intentions. They think they have cornered me, but they have underestimated how far a father will go to protect his true heir. Take the key in this box and visit my personal attorney, Mr. Harrison. Everything you need to dismantle their plan is waiting for you. Be silent, be patient, and let them hang themselves with their own greed." Standing in the dim light of Dad's office, the cold brass key heavy in my palm, the grief that had paralyzed me for weeks suddenly transformed into pure, unshakable resolve. At 8 o'clock sharp the next morning, I walked into the downtown branch of First Capital Bank. Sitting in a private conference room was Mr. Harrison, Dad's longtime personal attorney, and one of the few men my father truly trusted. He offered me a warm, reassuring smile as the bank officer placed the heavy steel safety deposit box on the table between us. "Your father called me 2 years ago, Clara," Mr. Harrison explained quietly as I used the brass key to unlock the latch. "He realized early on what Victoria and her son were attempting to do to his life's work. He knew they were slowly isolating him, and he knew they would try to manipulate his will the moment his health faltered." As the lid lifted, I learned the truth about my father's true estate arrangements. Mr. Harrison explained the legal structure clearly. 2 years ago, while completely clear of mind, your father transferred the entire corporate holding structure of Vance Logistics, the real estate portfolio, and the main estate into an irrevocable family trust. He named you, Clara, as the sole trustee and 100% beneficiary upon his death. I stared at him in disbelief. "So the will Victoria signed with him is virtually worthless," Mr. Harrison interrupted with a sharp smirk. "The will only covers assets held in his personal name, which amounts to a few empty bank accounts. The house Victoria is living in and the business Julian thinks he's running don't belong to your father's personal estate. They belong to the trust. And you control the trust." Mr. Harrison looked at me across the table, his eyes sharp. "We can present these trust records today, Clara, and have Victoria and Julian served by noon. They'll be legally locked out before sunset." I thought about the weight of the last 6 years pressing on my chest. "No," I said quietly. "Not yet." Mr. Harrison raised an eyebrow. "Why wait?" "Because if we stop them now, they'll claim technicalities. They'll drag this through press and appeals, playing the grieving widow and devoted stepson," I replied, a cold clarity settling over me. "I want them to take this all the way to probate court. I want them to lay out their greed, their forged signatures, and their arrogance in front of a judge. I want them completely exposed." For the next 3 weeks, I played the part of the defeated, heartbroken stepdaughter to perfection. I packed my belongings into plain cardboard boxes while Julian arrogantly toured Dad's executive office, already redecorating it. I took Victoria's condescending comments with a bowed head as she reminded me daily of my impending 30-day deadline. They were so intoxicated by their apparent victory that they rushed their lawyers to schedule an expedited probate hearing, eager to officially strip me of any remaining claims to the Vance name. They thought they were walking into court to claim their kingdom. They had no idea they were walking directly into a trap. The probate courtroom was quiet, save for the low murmur of legal counsel. Victoria sat at the petitioner's table wearing a dark designer suit, her diamond earrings sparkling under the fluorescent lights. Julian sat beside her, looking smugly satisfied as their high-priced attorney laid out their petition to settle Dad's estate according to the revised will. I sat calmly with Mr. Harrison, wearing a simple navy dress, completely silent. Victoria leaned over to her attorney, not bothering to hide her smirk as she whispered loud enough for the court reporter to hear, "Without us, she'd have absolutely nothing." The judge adjusted his glasses, reviewing the filings Victoria's team had provided. Then he looked over at Mr. Harrison, who calmly stood up to address the court. "Your Honor," Mr. Harrison said smoothly, "before you rule on the decedent's personal estate, please review the official registry for the Vance Irrevocable Family Trust, executed 2 years prior." The judge accessed the system to verify the trust details. The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. "Wait," the judge said, his voice echoing off the high ceilings as he looked back and forth between Victoria's smug smile and the official record. "They really don't know?" Victoria's attorney froze, his confident posture instantly collapsing. He leaned toward his client and whispered frantically, "Know what?" The judge looked directly at Victoria and said, "Because she isn't asking for her father's estate. She already owns the trust that controls all of it." Victoria's smirk vanished instantly. Her face went completely pale. The judge revealed that the personal estate they were fighting over was empty, and that Clara was actually the legal landlord of the house Victoria lived in and the owner of the business Julian worked for. The courtroom erupted into quiet chaos as Victoria's attorney scrambled to comprehend the trust structure. But the law was absolute. The judge formally dismissed their petition to probate the empty estate, leaving Victoria and Julian holding nothing but massive legal bills for a fight they had already lost. The very next morning, I didn't waste a single second. As the sole trustee of the Vance Family Trust, I had Mr. Harrison serve Victoria with a formal, non-negotiable 30-day notice to vacate my father's house, the exact same timeline she had arrogantly given me weeks earlier. She tried to call, to beg, to claim we were still family, but I blocked her number and let my legal team handle all communication. Within 2 weeks, Julian was officially removed from his position at Vance Logistics. Without his mother's protection or my father's standing, he quickly realized that his arrogance couldn't cover for his complete lack of qualifications. Victoria was forced to liquidate her personal luxury items to settle her high-priced attorney fees and accrued debts. She and Julian ended up moving into a small rented apartment on the outskirts of the city, completely stripped of the wealth and influence they had tried to steal. As for me, I moved back into my childhood home, clearing out the cold, pretentious decor Victoria had installed and restoring the warmth my father had built there. I officially stepped into my role as the head of the trust, ensuring Vance Logistics continued to thrive while creating the Arthur Vance Foundation, a philanthropic initiative dedicated to supporting young entrepreneurs and protecting vulnerable heirs from family financial abuse. Standing in my father's study, looking out over the garden we planted together, I finally felt at peace. I didn't just survive their scheme, I reclaimed my family's legacy.